First item is determining a quorum. I don't think we're gonna vote on much tonight, but we have 4 of 5 members here. We need 3 for a quorum. Um, any adjustments to the agenda?
We do have someone in the audience who would like to do, I guess, a pre-application.
Pre-application.
Pre-application, so it was probably gonna come up in citizens' comments, but I don't know if you'd want to just have that count as a pre-application.
It doesn't matter to me. Yeah, I don't know what it is yet. Yeah, let's do that in the citizens' comments. I have a couple of things to talk about, but I don't think we need to adjust the agenda for them.
Okay.
So, let's do citizen comments. Would you introduce yourself and step up and tell us about your project?
George Seaver, owner of the Baltimore Business Park and Carter Ocean Organics Corporation. Associate here, Josh Nichols, does our equipment and building and machinery. So we have been working on, this is why this is a pre-application. We've been working on a project for a couple of years to dehydrate the waste stream from the eel factory, because they have a lot of money they spend with interstate getting rid of eel waste. We also can dehydrate some of our own materials, and what we have on the road coming to us right now is referred to as a flaker. Is there a better name for it? Accurate. It's 2 big shiny rolls that you heat with steam, and you put something wet in the middle and scrape it off dry on the outside. So you take movable wet stuff and it comes out like little black cornflakes. We can use that in our other granulated fertilizers, or possibly some of these combinations we could sell directly as kind of real specialty ingredients. There's lots of things that people are still trying to understand about how natural products work and why they work better than not natural products. It's all to do with messaging and relationships in the soil between plants and these natural compounds. So the reason this is a pre-application is we are still trying to figure out exactly the sequence so that we can take this machine that's going to be delivered momentarily or in a couple of days. It's 30,000 pounds of ready to run rollers. We have a place in our facility, but where we want to put it in the facility, we're now using for storage. So we have to come up with a way to solve storage problems, at least temporarily. In conjunction with that, and we're working with Maine Coast Construction, John Davey, we're looking at hopefully within 6 months, and maybe formally being presented within 2, would be a 80 by 120 foot building up on the hill behind our basic plant. I don't know how many people are familiar with the lay of land up there, but it's just different aerial shots.
Which building is yours? This long
They're
group of
they're all
buildings?
they're all mine.
Oh, okay.
In a sense. Yeah, this is where we make the seaweed factory, the seaweed products. This circle right here is a parking lot that we've just made better so we could do some temporary storage if we wanted to. That's just a parking lot that we're working on right now. This is actually maybe a better picture. That's from Google Earth. This is where we are thinking of having some temporary storage. Up here in this corner where the 3-phase power goes up is where we'll be building the building with something like that.
Okay.
The property is right here, and all this is happening in this part of the property here. The reason we're still trying to figure out the best way to do it, because depending on how much we have to store, we could move it around in our own building, but we want to be positioned so that we can get one of these temporary arch buildings that people put up everywhere. These things, that you can put up on cement piers and take down a week later. Or some people don't seem to ever take them down, but that's kind of why I'm here. So anyway, the idea is we want to kind of start the conversation so that when I come back, it'll be not the first time you've heard of this stuff. To me, it's a very exciting proposition that Waldeboro will have the only eel grow out facility in the country, and it will have no waste of any kind coming out of it. They're making fish sauce out of anything that isn't actual eel, and if we make fertilizer out of all the other waste, right in the same building.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's
Um,
great.
What do they do with the waste currently?
Interstate takes it a couple times a week,
Yeah, but
like a couple thousand gallons a week. But the crazy thing about Interstate now, because they still take some of our waste too, that we could now dry. Because of Forever Chemicals, and Josh and I went over and had a tour over there, they can't land spread anything anywhere, even though it could be completely safe. In fact, it probably is safer than the limits, but
There's no demand for it, right?
Well, no, there's a big demand, except no one
Huge
would
demand.
dare use it.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, they can't do it.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing with this material. I guess they.
And that's the state that's hanging things up as far as those.
Yeah, I don't think that the federal government has reached any limits yet. They're willing to talk about. Maine is really leading the discussion
Mhm.
in Forever Chemicals and mitigating them. Are they a problem? Aren't they a problem?
Yeah.
There's people in Maine doing things with biochar to do with mitigating, so, and we're on the front edge of that too.
so the waste is being currently pumped into a tank, and then that tank is being, that's being taken from the tank by interstate.
Yes, it stores in a tank and then periodically they have to take.
And this machine that you're buying,
Right,
that's a drying machine, so it's gonna take this waste and dry it out and dry it out.
yeah, instead of Interstate driving away with it, sloshing around in a big tank.
Right.
And I don't honestly know what they're doing with it, because I think they have,
I believe they pay to dispose of it.
but I don't know where, is it?
New Jersey.
It's in-
So steam is a byproduct of where
Yeah,
does the
yeah,
water
steam,
go?
steam goes off into the sky. Not,
And that's clean steam.
well, one of the
Is it
things. that
fishy
we're-
smelling? or that
Well,
kind
yeah,
of thing?
it's a very good question, and it's one we're working on, as part of the reason this is a pre-application.
Mhm.
We're trying to come up with a way, the waste stream doesn't smell until it ferments or rots or composts. So if we can get the logistics figured out so that we get it fresh, yeah, it does, it's just, doesn't smell.
Mhm.
When we've done a little bit of benchtop work, you can tell you're doing something with waste, but it wasn't as significant as we thought it
No,
might.
with proper ventilation.
So you can adjust the pH, there's things you can do to manipulate the waste so that it doesn't ferment and rot or compost. And some of those things are what we do with our seaweed products as well, so to stabilize it.
So
Does
now-
anyone else have, excuse me, anybody else have one of these up and running around?
Roll dryer?
Yeah, what you want to do, is there anything?
Across the road.
Yeah, they have one.
Atlantic Labs has a smaller one across the road.
We actually have a small.
Or seaweed.
And do they have any issues with, I mean, does anybody have any issues with what they're doing?
No, not that. I mean, sometimes you're on Cross Street, you'll see plumes of steam
Right,
from drying seaweed, but it's just steam.
But so downwind of drying eel byproduct is like a little bit like good low tide?
We don't know yet.
We haven't done it on enough. That
I love low tide, but like,
Yeah.
there's good and there's bad low tide.
would be the wish. If we get it fresh, then it should smell like low tide. If it ferments.
And we wouldn't be doing it all the time. This thing
Yeah.
has the capacity to,
Does the economic viability of this project depend on using the eel waste, or would you buy it anywhere?
we would buy it anyway.
Okay, because, I mean, I do think that there's a real possibility that could create so much smell. Regardless, because
But the,
it's not seaweed,
It's waste.
it's
Yeah.
waste.
Yeah.
You know,
It absolutely is. No, and as again, Josh will tell you how much we consider and talk about that. The other things that we would dry don't have any odor at all. The other materials of our own waste streams.
Right.
That's
that's a seaweed product, isn't it? Or what do you?
well, the place that makes soy milk has a waste of their own. It's,
Hmm.
I'm not sure what you call it, but it's the waste of making soy milk.
Right,
which has got protein and nitrogen, amino acids, all things we like, but has no odor.
Right.
That comes out like white
Right.
corn flakes. So if there was ever was a complaint, then we would do it.
Right.
But I don't, from our sense of what goes on and where we are, and it's part of the reason industrial parks are industrial parks, we're not near anybody who would smell it.
Well, I mean.
And
a
how
whole
are you,
host of houses right nearby you, that, you know, I don't know
Yeah,
what
but
the hell they're down.
there's also farms
Yeah.
that are pretty noxious, having exposure there as well, so.
We would not be the worst smell in the neighborhood. We've been there for 40 years, making different smells.
Well, no, I mean, but this specific project has a potential for emitting something quite different.
Well, that's,
But that's yet to be seen, 'cause no one's done it before, you're saying.
not around here that I know. That's a good question. I don't know if anybody's,
Well, eel waste could be its own thing, I'm not sure, yeah.
yeah, eel weights may be different.
There's plenty of flakers out there that are flaking off any sort of different product. These are baby formula.
These came from Gerber,
came from
actually.
Gerber for creating baby formula.
So from an approval standpoint,
I'm not asking you to approve anything.
I'm confused why this is coming to the planning board, because this is a building construction project that would normally get approved by code enforcement,
Well,
correct?
it's too big, I think, for.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
it?
so
well,
if
it's a
it,
temporary storage unit. Is that,
Well,
that you're not sure how
That's
that's,
why I'm doing such a bad job. We don't know exactly if we're gonna need to make one of those arches small or how long we'll need it. We do know that it's temporary in the sense that you can take it down if someone says, take that down. A lot of people put them up indefinitely. So, but until we know for sure how the logistics of moving things around are gonna go, we don't even know exactly how big we would need or how much more space. Ultimately, the building that up on the bigger building would have space in it for overflow storage. We sometimes rent warehouse space in Augusta, but we. would
and
rent
you've got plenty of property to build-
60 acres.
build another, yeah.
So,
So what are the issues, Max?
so,
Are you Googling it?
no,
Is this going to be another situation where we have to determine if we have a industrial or a light industrial use?
well, yeah, because if it was under 10% of the area, it would have been a minor commercial addition. Mark would approve that.
Oh, it's an addition?
If it was, if it
Oh.
if
was.
we put a tunnel to our building. it
It's an
changes the whole
addition.
thing. It's a little,
And then light industrial would be, it's too big for light industrial at that point, because light industrial is a certain amount of square footage. So I didn't know what the pre-application was gonna be about tonight either.
Okay,
Was this about just,
I just assumed.
it was
you'd had a
just letting them
conversation.
know it's a
yeah,
project.
I just,
Yeah,
yeah.
the next time I come in, I'll be the guy who was here before, who didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
You can wear a disguise.
But this is also just a chance if hearing about it and it does come back to the board, is there something to keep in mind, like the
Yeah.
odor or
No,
anything
the
else?
odor is that's a legitimate question. I mean, I take that very seriously. We have to be there, you know.
right, yeah. So the question of whether it's industrial or light industrial, apparently our land use ordinance requires us to have a meeting. That's still correct, right?
Yeah.
So we would have to determine that. And one of the things that we have to
Wait.
make a
since it's
ruling
already-
on.
Since it's already an industrial zone, doesn't,
No, so the
What
whole thing
happened?
on light industrial is when, because this is what happened with North Country Windmills. If it is considered light industrial, it would be something Mark would approve. But the
Right.
standards say that the planning board has to determine based on the specific standards for a light industrial use.
Right.
And be, just to distinguish, are you talking about the genuinely temporary thing that would be in our parking lot? Or the big building that we plan to build with Main Coast Construction? The one with Main Coast Construction, absolutely. Well, they also built the Yale building.
I'm just covering all my bases and saying both. I know
Okay,
you're saying
either-
temporary,
okay.
but temporary could be 2 months, 6 months, it's based on whatever you have for an actual plan. We have to talk about that
Well,
later.
one of our great sources of pride is how we've never had a plan. which is-
Yeah, my
a
husband-
Solution, and it's worked. I mean, it's-
The first thing
Right.
my husband ever said to me, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary solution.
Yeah.
All right, so the
It's been the story of his life.
it's a 10,000 square foot limit.
Oh, yeah, no, there's no question we're big enough to have problems.
Yeah.
We're not making cupcakes, we're shipping hundreds of thousands of gallons of seaweed extract around the country.
So if he was just coming with a temporary building, would it have to come in front of us? And that wouldn't be 80 by 120, the temporary building?
That, the temporary one could be something like 40 to 60, or it would fit in our parking lot that we already have because pictures of it.
Okay,
So the way that this works is the industrial is planning board, code enforcement is light industrial. So, but we have to have a meeting to determine which one gets it. So we have one meeting to determine who's responsible, and then we have another meeting to approve it, or hopefully we do it all at the same time.
Time will become my enemy at some point. That's why I'm here to start cracking the door open.
So you're at 120 by 80 in this example, which is just under 10,000 square feet, which probably would put your temporary
That has-
storage.
I can't imagine that wouldn't belong with a formal presentation and the drainage plans and all.
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Yep.
That I fully expect. And I hope that Maine Coast Construction has the. I believe they do the whole thing for me.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure
So
they
you-
do.
and you pipe all the waste from the factory to the new setup?
Well, that's interesting you put it that way. It's actually downhill from the eel factory down to a place we might do some of this. That's part of the logistics is we have a truck that we can carry 6 or 8 of those 275 gallon totes.
Yeah.
We're moving things around inside the park all the time.
Are you considering putting in like an underground structure and just pumping the waste from one building to the other?
Well, it would actually flow. It literally is downhill to
Okay.
one of our buildings. That's probably not the building where the roll flaker would be. So we would, probably, know anybody with a used fire truck? I think we need, seriously.
Yep.
These 275 gallon totes that there's a lot of them in the world are very handy because they individually, you don't have a big environmental threat from 275 gallons like you would from, 5,000 gallons. So we like individual totes and they never leak. And they have a valve and you empty them and you rinse them out.
Yeah.
So we will probably move in the totes. But again, what we would love to do, and this is a matter of working with Sarah Redemaker, I was talking to her today about it, is get the material, take the timing of our transfers so that it's already been stabilized and doesn't smell. Doesn't smell until it smells.
This slurry that, the current. Slurry, how much water is involved in that?
That's usually 80% moisture. Oh,
80%? 20% solid?
Yep.
Wow. It's a lot.
That's why,
Yeah.
that's why interstates,
And so when you put this through your machine, that 80% is gonna become steam?
It'll process roughly 8,000 pounds of 80% moisture material in an 8-hour period.
it's a trivial amount of steam compared to the seaweed drying across the street, if that means
Is
it.
it?
Oh, yeah, no, they're doing
How many gallons?
25 to
How many
30,000
gallons
pounds
you
in
talking
the
about?
same period.
Of steam or?
No, of slurry, a
Probably a couple thousand a week.
couple thousand a week?
And that, again, that could be processed in a day.
Does the steam carry any biological material as it's evaporating? Is, if I understand it, so you've got waste, you evaporate it, but some of that is carried with it? Is
Not,
there like a reverse plume? You follow what I'm saying?
If that was the case, then people probably wouldn't drink
it,
moonshine.
just distillation is what we're talking about here. The water molecules float away once they're hot enough. You convert water molecules to steam molecules with 1,000 BTUs per pound and all that, but the distilled water, it's, the idea is you drive the water away and keep everything that isn't the water behind, so that it doesn't carry things with it.
Is that water coming from your own well or is it coming from the town?
The water that is involved,
Yeah,
well, that's interesting question. It's coming big, they go through about, and this is a matter of everyone's public record, they go through about 60 gallons a minute of water from the well. It used to be the town, I used to sell to the town, but we have this very, very good abundant well there. And when the town was using it for their water supply, they were going through about 120 gallons a minute, 24/7.
Wow.
These people with their recirculating system for the eel water, go through like between 50 and 60
50 and 60
gallons a minute,
a minute.
which gets all processed and it's all permitted back
Yeah.
into the river, cleaner than the river.
It's processed through. Well, the recycled part just stays within the system, but the slurry, actually, that gets carted off. So what's getting reprocessed and put into the river?
They have excess, so I wouldn't be able to speak to it too much. I don't work there, but they pump in 60 gallons a minute. That makes the eels, and collects the waste from the eels and supports the eels. And then that goes into a tank that they try to recycle, and a portion of that recycled amount can't be recycled, so they filter it and send it back to the river.
And put it back where?
Well,
In the river.
there's two fractions.
Well, they're not even close to, you mean that in the
Yeah.
river, right across the street?
Yes.
Really?
It's all, they've got an amazing water treatment system. The water going back into the river is every bit as clean as what came out of the ground.
This was all part of the original application.
Yeah, and I'm just surprised it's just the volume of water, but that's coming out of your well now because the town doesn't take water from your well
Not anymore.
anymore.
No, and the town's water system doesn't go to the industrial park.
Right. Yeah.
We're independent.
Well, I think it's pretty cool.
Yes, and again, all I can do is apologize for all the things I don't have answers to, but we're feeling our way into this. The only people who would be more unhappy about smell than you would be us. So,
Because you have to be there.
so we are determined that we won't stink. Just because
Is that water that you come from your well, is that coming from the same aquifer that the water the town's coming from? Or is it different?
I think they're interconnected. I think they did all kinds of studies when they were approving the town system to see what the effect of the wellhead levels was in the other wells around the community.
Yeah, they did 150 gallon a minute drawdown of our well for over 8 hours.
So one of them was like a week.
Yeah, nonstop.
Yeah, they tested all the wells in the region. Our well is 500 feet deep. And I think that the town wells are less than that.
I would rather look at Mark on that question.
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
Well, either way, undoubtedly, there's an issue. They had to be very diligent about impacts on other wells.
I mean, I just wonder how much drawdown you can do without really affecting
Well,
the aquifer.
Well, for 12 years, the town was taking 125 gallons a minute. People have calibrated, people had drilled the well back in 40 years ago. Calibrated it at a 500 gallon a minute yield.
Yeah, I
And-
know, but I know the recovery rate there, but how long is that sustainable for? I mean,
Well, it was 12 years that the town did it at twice the volume.
And the other thing is, that area has a special review process as well, so a regular home wouldn't have to do anything special, but if there was new commercial use, that's another thing the planning board, those are some additional standards the planning board would be reviewing with us, working with the main water company, so that they give their insight on it as well.
None of that has anything to do with this project.
What?
None of this has anything to do with this
Well,
project.
it's a fair
This is, yeah, sure, it's interesting, but
Long term.
let's get back to this.
Yep.
The way that I see this going is we'll have to have this light industrial versus industrial meeting. We'll determine if it's gonna be the planning board or if it's gonna be code enforcement. Looks to me like for this, it's code enforcement if you're gonna keep the building under 10,000 square feet.
What you mean, which building? That new one?
That's what you're talking about building, right?
Well, that's why, that's phase two. What we're talking about in the very short term is a place to put our stuff.
Yeah.
So we have room for the machine that we brought in.
Okay, and that's your temporary building, which if I saw that right from afar is even smaller than that.
Yeah, but that's.
Right, so I think that's that's gonna be the process, is that we're gonna have to have the determination meeting about who's the approver, and then it's gonna go to code enforcement. The one part of that is, we have a lining here about creating a nuisance. So it would be fantastic if we could know something about like, what is the steam release like? What is the odor like? I'm sure you're gonna set your machine up and do some tests and start to figure that out, right? So,
I think we're distinctly talking about two separate things. When he's talking about building his other building, the permanent one. My feeling is from what I've heard so far is that's coming to you.
because you think it's
Because that's gonna
industrial,
be, that's gonna be, industrial.
yeah.
The
Creating
size and
potential
everything
uses.
else is gonna put it in the industrial category. Yeah,
Oh,
the
what?
temporary storage unit that he's referring to. That is what I think he is looking
right,
to talk about now, and that is more or less, it is just storage.
right.
So
No,
I
I-
don't necessarily think that that would fall into an industrial, light industrial category or industrial, it's storage.
well,
You
it's
know, he's
zoned,
not doing
it's,
any manufacturing, anything else, he's just storing some of the stuff there.
It's the equivalent of putting some of our fertilizer pellets under the tarp.
so what are we calling this then in the matrix? Who's the
So
approver?
she just goes to you? Or does he even need to? Or it's just- it's-
Storage, I was thinking it would just come to code enforcement officer. But again, down the road, that other building.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that definitely crosses over into the planning board,
Sure.
that needs to
I,
go.
I.
It's not because of the size, if you're under 10,000 square
Well,
feet.
but that's even, no one said that like that before, so that's interesting because it happens to be 9,600. What's gonna be going on in there will be storage and, there's some people who want for some woodworking, I mean, there's, it's a freestanding separate building in an industrial park. I don't know if you can have light industry adjacent to not light industry based on the building size. Because the building that Ocean Organics is in, that long one, it also has a rope factory at the other end. That's, I think, 48,000 square feet. So if we had a connecting tunnel, then it would be a less than 10%. But it would be wacky to build a connecting tunnel just to avoid coming to the planning.
I don't think it's necessary. None of the stuff you're gonna store is hazardous waste outside,
Fertilizer
right?
that we sell all over the country.
Yeah, okay.
This
Excellent.
seems like a simple go to market, get a permit thing for a temporary building. Is it?
Does the planning, this is a question now, does the planning board, does this group, is there a definition for temporary?
Yeah, it's a good question.
From the building codes, there is no
No
temporary,
distinction.
no,
Anything
there's
that's built-
structure, no structure.
So if it's sitting on a concrete block, sitting on
Yep.
gravel,
We permitted all these different things before, what like salt sheds and people put the. Steel frame, plastic coverings over them, their structures, they get permitted.
And you can leave them up for 1 year or 25 years at that point.
Yep,
The closest uses we have when it comes to storage are self-storage containers, so your own personal use, and then there's warehouse.
Yep,
And
that was what I had seen too. I was just scanning through for something else.
Do you have a column or a line or category for these ocean freight boxes that everyone builds things with?
Mhm.
And are they,
their structures,
they are, okay.
they get permitted just like everything.
but they still have to follow all the setbacks and all that stuff. So
And
So they're
the
temporary.
shipping containers that he's referring to, those actually have special regulations as well. They have to
Yeah.
be concealed from the public.
yeah. But the temporary buildings, wind, we're not going, the building codes aren't concerned about wind or blown over or knocking over your neighbor's house or. I mean, there are some, these things are going up, they're like mushrooms
Yes.
around town. So,
They're cheap.
yeah,
That's it. When you're talking about, $4,000 for a 40 by 8.
so we're not worried, you're not worried when you see, I mean, that kind of thing.
If they're
that's-
stacking them one on top of the other, yeah. If they're just, putting them single down.
No, I'm talking about these hoop buildings you see all over the place.
Oh, the hoop buildings?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, they're like anything else. They have to be secured to the ground. They can't be,
They
They
have
can't be
snow
free
load
floating.
ratings.
they have to be secured so that they don't fly away. So.
have we solved this problem?
I'm not sure we can.
Hey, well, if we call it warehousing, then the planning board has to approve it anyway,
Mhm.
so.
But can you
But-
go ahead with this temporary building? Is what
So
he's
here,
wondering.
there's actually no distinction for anything in between a shipping container and actual warehouse. Is that something that can be done?
Well, fancy you should mention that.
What?
We have a list going. Sounds like we should sort of address it. Do you think, Mark?
I think that
Definition?
I
there's no difference between a warehouse and a shipping container. The difference is, what are you using it for?
No, a plastic hoop house kind of thing. That's no difference from that either?
It is a storage facility, the same as it would be if it's a completely steel or concrete or whatever building it is. It's a structure. It's the use that differentiates it in the code scheme of things,
Okay,
so.
got it.
It would be an ordinance change, which goes to town meetings, and we just did one very recently, but we will talk in just a bit about other things, so this is probably one of those items to talk about too.
Or just it getting, the definitions getting.
Cleaned up.
But I think I sort of, this question that you raised by the square footage of the building the real building. If it's a freestanding building in the Waldeboro Business Park that is under 10,000 feet, and you're not doing, are the functions characterized in light industry versus industry?
Yep, let me just pull that up.
Feeling they were. So if we say we're making cupcakes, it's light industry.
I mean,
So,
I don't think we're looking at a really a different set of approval parameters for it, regardless of what we call it.
light industrial,
No, woodworking is one of the, or there's different woodworking related opportunities that may gel, and for half of that building, it's gonna be split.
Oh, okay.
so light industrials. The 10,000 square foot, there's also outdoor storage as well. Will not create a nuisance by smoke, vibration, odor, or appearance. Parking and loading facilities are not oriented towards any residence within 300 feet, which I assume is an easy pass. And then the use is determined to be a low impact activity determined by the planning board, including by way of example, only the following: bakeries, breweries, bottling, printing and publishing, pharmaceuticals, machine shops, precision instruments, watchmakers, musical instruments, toys and sporting goods, pottery and ceramics using only pulverized clay, wood products, jewelry, assembly of electrical components, canteen services, tool and die shops, and the packaging of foods.
Which basically, even though Ocean Organics is too big to qualify, the functions we do at Ocean Organics probably could be categorized in that kind of the bottling of
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah, that would be their determination
Yeah.
when an application is brought
Right.
forward.
But the reason I'm dwelling on this to the extent I am, is that it sounded like if it was light industry under 10,000 feet, you could approve it without going to the planning board
Planning board has to make the determination that it would be light industrial.
based on the size and the function.
The planning board shall classify an industrial use as a light industrial use if it finds it meets the following standards. So this is what we did with North Country Windmill. They had to come to the planning board and say, here are the 7 items that determine if it's light industrial. This is how we feel we complete it. And then the planning board would just make that motion to make that
Did they
determination.
qualify as light or,
Yes,
okay, and they're forming metal? Just as perspective, little metal, but.
Yep.
Well, sorry, I hate to talk about shooting yourself in the foot. If,
You don't have to.
yeah,
I do, he knows I will. Someday, one part of this building might be used for something different,
Change of use.
and then we come streaming in here and talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a simple question, simple answer.
Yep.
I was worried what you were gonna get. Yeah, when you said that.
Me too.
No, but those are
And-
good, those are good questions.
That was the calendar stuff, that was the drawing we did to approve the arch building that's up there in the same neighborhood. So anybody who ever wants to, he's serious, wants to come up and see what goes on at the business park.
What's going on in the Arch Building?
Right now, they were growing oysters or trying to grow oysters. That didn't work out. More complicated than they thought. Right now, it's all to do with rope doormats.
Okay,
They're storing all the woven doormats up.
uh-huh.
Putting it to good use. Yeah, I was over looking, that eel operation is just amazing. And it seemed to be selling eels. And
Yeah.
it's a good building.
All right, well, thank you, sir.
Like my rubble, but seriously, anybody wants to stop by and see what we're doing?
Yeah, thanks.
People always say, I didn't know this could be going on in here.
But the eel thing is kind of like a high security. I mean, you can't just, I mean, they don't have open houses very
No,
much.
it's
'cause
the
it's
problem,
too-
the disease things. You
Yeah.
could have a disaster if a disease gets in there on
It's too bad.
the floor. So, yeah, you have to wash your feet and wear new booties.
There's special suits, you know.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks a lot.
Good night.
Good night.
Close your doors.
Yes. All right, assuming we have no citizen comments, let's move on to workshop and the goals for the upcoming year.
Yeah, so. Since it's just been quiet now and who knows if the subdivision is actually gonna keep going forward. Figured this might be just a good chance to. Sit down, reflect on the past year and give everyone a chance to kind of. Give an idea for things that could be done differently with the planning board, things you want to see improved or changed. It was kind of said at the select board meeting, but I'm actually going to be going away from the planning department. I'll have someone else coming in to take my spot here. So this is also a good opportunity for that person to have an idea for what people liked about how I ran behind the scenes, how to do the planning board stuff and what should be done differently.
You're going away to where?
So I am going to be involved with a brownfield redevelopment program, so to help clean up some sites in the area and get them back on the market
In this area?
in the region, yeah, mid-coast.
So for the state or for the?
Just
county?
the mid-coast region, so Brunswick up
Will
to,
you be leaving the town of Waldeboro's employee?
I am, yes, but I will be helping my
Okay.
replacement. So
Do we know who the replacement is?
Kate Takei, she was with the Island Institute before taking this position.
Okay.
So. It's sort of a good time to do a dive into ordinances, procedures, notifications, and just have an idea for what to do by next year. So
And what
that
do you think your schedule is? Are you gonna be around through the summer through?
I'll probably,
things?
I mean, she will. So she's actually being hired in the same organization as I'm currently contracted with, so it's not like I'm really gone. She will likely call me quite a few times. And I'll probably still be around in July to help with some of the applications that are gonna be held over, like we have a Board of Appeals application that's coming forward. She has no idea how that's gonna work, so I'm gonna help with that. The subdivision on Fintown, if that actually moves forward, I might be coming back for those meetings as well.
Mhm.
But me being in the office is probably gonna be my last month.
Okay. And I'm not signing up again, guys, in case Max didn't tell you, my
Yeah.
time is up. So I'm not,
Is this your last meeting?
this is my last meeting,
Yeah.
which I,
So I take it you won't be at the subdivision meeting later. In the month,
when it comes up again,
when it comes up again, yeah,
but
cause
we don't think it's going to, do we?
I think actually he sent me an email. So I also wasn't at the meeting, so I'm going based on secondhand information.
Hmm.
He has given got a document about what the stormwater plan is. It's very bare, but I heard there was some contention between the Warren Board and the applicant about stormwater plans and whether it was necessary. So,
No,
No?
no, it's 100% necessary. They're forbidden by their
or
land use ordinance.
they
to
can't do
waive
a
it.
waiver, right?
Yeah,
And that's kind of what I was. Oh, the Warren Planning Board said, we need the stormwater plan. The applicant said, can you not give us the waiver.
Yes, and they don't have a choice. They can't waive it. So like an engineer can still make a plan.
Right.
You know, they can still analyze the flows. You know, talk about a potential hypothetical situation. But they can't really design any mitigation features for
Right.
stormwater because how could you possibly do it when you don't know what
Well, that's
the
gonna be big.
grading's gonna change,
Right.
you know, so
So
a little goofy.
So the applicant has said he wants to be on the next possible agenda, which would have been, I think, June 26th. Well, that was another question that was gonna be raised.
June 26th.
So he has a complete application.
I didn't say that.
Why are we talking about
All right,
it? Yeah, I mean, let's get the application together.
if he has a complete application, then.
Yeah, I mean, unless he's talking about doing something different, like
I-
they talked about a bunch of different scenarios about how they might chop the
His-
lots up and
His indication was to do another pre-application meeting with the stormwater plan to see if that's fine. But it sounds like wait until there's an actual full finished plan.
yeah, I mean. We've already had 2 meetings with an incomplete application. Yeah, I mean, let's get a complete application.
Okay.
I don't know, unless there's something that's changed that like.
He
You know,
has
like,
enough information to make decisions.
yeah, I mean, I think no matter what, like, there's no end run around Warren's rules. Unless you wanna try to split the lot on the town line and then wait 5 years and then. Do a
Right.
subdivision of Waldeboro. You know, like, I don't know what he's trying to do. Like, they talked something about cutting it up at least 3 or 4 different ways in the meeting.
Okay.
So, I mean, if there's more to it, then let's find out. But like, if you want to meet on June 26th, aren't you gonna miss your deadline for notification?
Uh,
Wouldn't you have had to do that last week?
yeah, I pretty much would have to talk with well, no, cause, who was it? Dan, the planner over in Warren, said he will have it in the paper tomorrow, or he will submit the paper for
Okay.
next week, so. But he's also talking with the Warren Planning Board tonight to see if they're fine with doing this as well, so. We kind of agreed I would talk with you all, see if you're up for the 26th, and he would talk with the Warren Planning Board to see if they're fine with the 26th, or if. Same thing that you were talking about, just the document saying, here's the stormwater plan is enough for a pre-application, or if you would prefer just waiting for an actual completed application.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, it seems like they're trying to get a waiver from Warren. They can't give them the waiver.
Okay.
But like, if they don't. I don't know. I mean, if they have the thing in the works, like, I don't care. I could be on the 26th. But like, I don't know what's happening with it exactly. If we don't have an application, you know, engineering turnarounds on something like that aren't usually, you
Take a
know,
long
in the
time.
2-week range. It's more like the 2-month range. So I'd be kind of surprised if he's got this in the works,
Okay.
you know?
I will talk with my colleague tomorrow to see what the Warren Planning Board said as well.
Yep. Okay.
But if it is fine, would people be
I'd come
fine
back for that subdivision thing, but
if it's a complete application?
yes, not a pre-app. I
Okay,
mean, preferably not. So I'd be willing to come back in July if that's,
June 26th, which
June 26th, or if you can't get it together,
July.
then the July thing, that would work. That'll be my last one.
Eric, thoughts?
I'm good.
Good.
Okay, so I will see. But after that, then Barbara, you are done.
Thank you.
You'll be turned out. And as we kind of were talking earlier, Ruben, even though he was the alternate voting member, because he's been elected to select board. He has informed me he has stepped down. So town's gonna put out notices for filling the positions.
And is that John Fellow is he part of the board anymore?
That's a good question, because I sent the same email about his term being up and I haven't heard anything, so
Whose term?
John Heller.
Oh, no.
So I'm gonna have to see how that's going as well. Um.
Okay.
So yeah. Still would be great to get your thoughts on the planning board, Barbara, and
Yeah.
ways it could improve.
Well, I have an idea. How do you want to start this? How do you want, do you have ideas about this?
I mean, I had just ordinance procedure notifications on the agenda, but really
Mhm.
anything people want to discuss. This can be a meeting that ends at 8. This could be a meeting that ends at 7.
Yeah,
Depends on what you all want to talk about.
So
yeah.
I'll start. I learned yesterday, I think it was, that we have a set of rules that we're supposed to follow for all these meetings that were published in 2002. They're on the town website.
Oh, the old bylaws.
It's called Planning Board Rules. It's on the town website. I never knew it was there, never heard of it.
You haven't read what you sent.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have thoughts about it. I don't particularly feel the need to
Is it from 2002?
2002, yeah. John Morris, Bo Yerkes,
That's
you weren't on there.
No.
So there's someone else whose name I know. Anyway, like I don't really feel the need to follow those rules. I don't think that running a meeting by strict Robert's Rules of Order in a small situation like this is necessarily useful. I mean, I think we've had some meetings where things have gotten heated that didn't need to, because people are talking over each other and arguing. That's sort of what Robert's rules are for, is keeping things organized. I've got enough to do. I don't really want to learn Robert's Rules of Order. But one thing that I thought, and I keep reminding myself to do this and forgetting to do it, is to do tone setting at the start of the meetings. When we've got a contentious issue, I remember to do it one time, and
That's good.
it made a
Good
big
to-
difference in just explaining to people how the meeting's going to work. It's like we've done these meetings over and over. We all know how this is going to work, and we just sit down and don't introduce ourselves and just launch into the meeting because we all want to get out of here before 8 o'clock.
Do we, for the most part, follow it though, as far as rules of decorum, or as the meetings are, or are we that far off of these Robert's rules?
There was a lot of pages. I don't think we're following them terribly close.
I didn't even realize we had those.
I didn't either.
Okay.
And like none of us have signed off on them, but it's still sitting there. And if somebody wanted to go to the Board of Appeals and complain about a decision we made and say we didn't follow our own rules, that might be something that they could use to beat us up with. So I think at the end of the day, the facts of the matter in dispute are probably really what should be, people be making decisions on. But I just thought I would throw that out there so that we're all aware of that situation.
Do any other boards have something like that on the town
not-
website? And should we just take it down?
Not
Take it
that many, and I mean, for the bylaws, it could be something you just take down, it could be something that's updated. That just goes over a process, but
I bet you someone has updated Robert's Rules of Order to a.
but I also think that maybe those, because you said it was 2002, those might have been created before we had the land use ordinance, which then covered the administrative part, the terms, a lot of things. Barbara, there's a spider right in front of you on the paper.
Oh, my God.
That's
Oh, don't
nothing.
kill it. It's gonna rain.
Sorry. It's gonna rain. It's gonna rain every Saturday anyway.
14 months in a row.
Wow.
So I guess for the bylaws, it could just be removed, placed, updated. What are you thinking?
I don't know. I've run a lot of meetings. Some of them I do well, some of them I don't do well. I don't think having the rules written down is going to make me run the meetings any better. But to me, the thing that really sort of jumped out of the page as I was reading this is like, if we ran those meetings that way, it'd be very inaccessible for people,
Mm.
you know, and the fact that we're able to do these meetings, have them be reasonably peaceable, and do it in a conversational way, I think helps to make town government accessible to everybody. You could walk in off the street and just talk about what's going on, and you know, we don't have to learn process or have people's speech tamped down because they can't really understand what's happening in the meeting, you know. So that was most of my thoughts on that, I think. Another thing that I had on my mind was the thing that we were just talking about with Warren and the subdivision waivers that we give all the time. And some of them, I think we just don't know how to handle, like financial performance. We never ask for anything on that, with the exception of maybe the medical office building. We got a letter from
Yeah.
their bank. We smooth over that all the time. The stormwater thing I thought was very interesting. Because of what is it, Dan at Warren?
Yeah.
What Dan said in the meeting about the stormwater plan being the only time that you see gradation, not gradation. You see like the grade of the surrounding area, because when you get a subdivision plan, that drawing from the engineer is going to stop basically at the property line that we are considering. And we don't necessarily know what's happening. And we could be looking at a subdivision, everything's sloping gracefully this way, all looks perfect when all you look at is those lots. But if you show the surrounding lots, maybe there's a big bowl right there that doesn't drain out very well. And the right of way for the driveway happens to sit in an area that floods out all the time. And you're not going to find that out if you don't do the stormwater plan. So like, we have no way of knowing that. If someone gives us a perfect application and we leave out the stormwater plan, like we can't judge that. And you wind up with a situation where somebody cuts up something and maybe you got a lot that's not developable because you didn't consider that, you know.
To that point, I think, because we talked about this earlier, is I think that the planning board on any subdivision greater than 2 to be required to do a site visit, because you look at these plans, you just, and you, as you say, you can't really see the surrounding area. You really don't know what the situation is until you actually walk it. And I think it's imperative that the planning board, there must be some kind of rule that the planning board must do a site visit on at some point, above 2, at or above 2. I mean,
Two lots, you mean, above two?
well,
lots?
subdivision by deed is, you're allowed to do
3,
something, right?
yeah.
So above 3, right? Where you're, there's a requirement, because I mean, that's kind of our job. I see it sort of as our job to get there and look at the space, look at the actual physical environment that's being done in, especially for a subdivision, because it has such impact on everyone around it. It isn't just may look nice and neat and tidy on paper, but it's a whole other thing when you get there and look at it on in situ. I'd like to see that as a requirement. I don't think it's so. How many subdivisions are there in a given year? I mean, not that many. I mean, it's not that onerous of a.
No, it's been an uptick recently, but it's an unusual uptick. We don't usually, Barbara's,
1 a year, 2 a year.
yeah, Barbara, how long has it, how many subdivisions in the 8 years?
Less fingers on the hand.
Yeah. It's just been an unusual amount this past few years.
Because of the growth though in Maine, I mean, you're probably gonna see more and more in the future.
Right.
I mean, gonna be,
Well, the only thing about that is some of the stuff's gonna come to us in the winter. And there's so much stuff available online for, even elevations, waters, wet areas, so a lot of that research can be done.
So I'd say this goes back, I think this was that could be put in just during the pre-application. They have to give a certain amount of information during the subdivision, but one of them can also be times and availability for a site visit. And then during that pre-application, meeting, the board can decide if they want to have a site visit if they want, and if they do, they know the times to do it.
No, I think it should be a requirement of the board to go. I mean, regardless of what they want or what, they have to find the time to do a site visit with the board. And I guess that becomes, as soon as the word's about, it becomes a town-wide thing, right? Anyone can go to the site visit, right? That's required.
Right.
isn't it?
It's a
Right.
public meeting at that point.
It's a public meeting at that point, but fair enough. I mean, subdivisions are too important just to let them sort of slide by.
But I think what I was getting at on the site visit item was the applicant should still let it be known when they can do the site visit, because it will be required to do it unless the board gives the waiver.
Right.
So. So Brendan, because so for the site visits, that's something to address for the subdivisions and bake that into the pre-application part. Brendan, for what you were talking about, was that about subdivisions or storm, like?
Yeah,
stormwater?
specifically with subdivisions, we have a requirement for it and we waive it all the time. I'm not sure that what Warren has done makes sense.
To require it.
to
and give no
require it.
waiver?
Yeah, like take Holly Simmons. Like we were gonna require her to do a stormwater plan for a house lot that's right next to another house lot that's been there for years. Like, it was. I mean, some situations are so straightforward that like doing that is just a waste of energy. I don't know.
But
I agree.
that becomes rather subjective. though.
Yeah, it totally does. And how do you know if you don't have the information? How do you know which one is a problem, which one's not?
Also, going back to this thing about financial viability too, I think that is something, I mean, I remember bringing up with this brewery they were gonna do on Route 1.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to that project?
I think it didn't get funded.
Didn't get funded, yeah, because I asked the question, is this gonna be a financially viable project? Because it's a lot of money, and they just didn't seem to know whether they were gonna get whether they had the money this way and that money that way. I mean, I think, that should be something that we explore more deeply with these people.
Mhm.
Because if they get halfway down the project and they run out of money, or they don't get the funding they need, and suddenly you got this eyesore on Route 1 or whatever, anywhere. We need to really get some
Yeah.
basic financials for people to see whether they can actually do these projects.
Wasn't that the VOA? It's not funded now when they raised the high school. That was a big, I thought that was pretty
So
much a
they-
done deal.
So they identified the funding sources, which
Right.
they were going for, but yes, there was certainly some pullback
I
on
did-
that. That was not expected.
Right. That was like a big,
Oh, like
I'm sorry, this is the
the school.
project right
former,
here.
former 80 grade school.
80 grade.
Yeah, yeah.
I buy it all the time because the end is right there. So like, what did happen? I mean, they don't have the funding for it?
So because it's affordable housing,
Yeah,
it has to depend on grants, which for most of these programs, they only get one shot a year. And the year they did apply for it, there was some error in the scoring, which they couldn't appeal on, so they didn't get it because of some errors that they. I don't know the scoring route. I don't understand the scoring rubric. I don't understand how they scored. Point is, they just didn't get it.
Yeah.
And now here's all this with the federal funding
Right.
potentially
Yeah,
getting cut
everything,
nonstop,
yeah.
so,
Say no more.
yeah, so they identified all the sources when they came before the board. They had the experience to get the funding, but now here we are.
yeah.
So just out of curiosity, what happens now? If they can't get the funding, so that project is defunct. The building's been torn down, and what happens next?
If they can't, if they are unable to actually do the project, the property would come back to the town of Waldeboro.
Right.
Which then, that's a different thing we're going down.
Right, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I know. So. Just getting back to this. I mean, the stormwater plan might be something to just come back to, seeing as how the Thin Town subdivision pretty much. That's this whole thing going on, maybe with what happens next, if Warren's thinking of requiring it, maybe it indicates something, if not, then. I don't know, it might just be more strengthened, same thing with the technical financial. a lot of those are up to the board's discrepancy of what you're looking for. Someone coming in with a letter from the bank saying, yeah, I have enough in my bank account to do this project. Some planning boards accept that, but you may want something different. You may need
Surety bond.
the bonds, anything really.
That's interesting. I mean, I have some ideas about, you know, something that I might ask for. But
Where is it?
like,
in a
do we
problem?
want to have detailed financial information on every business that comes to town flowing through the planning board?
No.
Well, in the case of the brewery, they came in, I remember that they gave us an estimate of what it was gonna cost to do it. I forgot what it was.
It was
now,
like $1
but
million.
it was, huh?
Yeah, it was like $1 million.
$1 million, but I was like, I was incredulous. I was like, there's no way you're gonna build that thing for $1 million, what they were talking about in terms of scale.
Hmm.
So I knew that that wasn't gonna happen. I mean, and so I think outside of locating the funding or talking about where they're gonna get the funding from, they had to come with a viable estimate of the cost of the thing. It would not just off the top of their head, oh, I think we can do this for $1 million, but they gotta come in, with some
Actual numbers.
real numbers. Viable numbers that you can base it on, because that was so absurd when they said, I thought it was absurd.
So for that brewery, that was during a pre-application. Which might lead into a bigger topic of how pre-applications are done. Cause cause usually how it's been done, because there's not that many actual rules for how a pre-application done. Really, someone with just, kind of like George tonight, can come in and just say, I have an idea, get your feedback, and then leave. And then some people just never follow up with it, like the brewery. So are you looking maybe for some more things that people need to do for their pre-application to come forward, or?
Yeah, because it's a waste of our time otherwise.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that at the pre-application phase. I mean, when you get into doing the what's it called, the preliminary? I was
Yeah.
get these wrong. The preliminary and the final. I think we need to have some facts. I think that the preliminary meeting is great because people show up and don't know anything about what is going to happen next, and we can teach them. We can tell them what we're going to need. We can send them away with a list, and it means that overall we wind up having fewer meetings because we don't have to go round and round with the same parties coming back with incomplete applications over and over.
But shouldn't that some of that be fielded by Mark or by Max or Max's replacement, where they can say, okay, well, here, this is what you need. You need to have all these things, and then you can come with pre-app. I mean, rather than just letting them come in and just shoot from the hip.
I'll let Mark speak for himself when it comes to this thing, but I will say that we do try and tell them, you should do this, you should do that. And some people just say, well, maybe I can make this argument. And in the end, I don't get to make those calls. It's the board who has to make those calls. So like George tonight, I did go over everything that I discussed with you with George, including warehousing being a planning board item. He is probably not a light industrial item, and if he is, he'd have to come to the planning board. And all of this is stuff that he still, a couple days later, said, well, I still want to come to the planning board for a pre-application, to which I said, what will be done at the pre-application? There you go. So I do
You
try.
weren't expecting him at all tonight.
People
No,
people want
he-
to talk to the manager.
So, and I am gonna have this attitude at this point just because I am in my phase out. So George will probably not be happy about all that, but that it is very common for me to tell people, please don't do this. I've literally worked with this planning board. This is what you should be doing. And if you choose to do it the other way, I can't guarantee what happens next.
Why do they get to choose to do it the other way? Why can't you just say this is the way it is and you gotta follow?
Because
my rules.
all decisions have to be made at the planning board. I take the application, I'll give people all my notes and my recommendations, but in the end, the planning board has to decide if it's a complete application. The planning board has to decide if it's satisfactory. Because that's what the ordinance says, and that's what state law has it done as. an example of all this, I don't know if Barbara, you remember this one, but Cornerstone, the office at the very top of the hill. I don't know if you remember the whole thing, but they came to me, gave me the application, and they insisted they did not need a site plan. Which I told them was not a good idea because that's exactly what the ordinance requires. And people are going to wonder, how are you doing all this stuff? And they're like, oh, it'll be fine. We're not going to do that much. And what happened? It was tabled because they didn't have a site plan.
The in and out off the Route 1 was an issue.
So on a checklist, they don't have to follow the checklist. I mean, they can say, well, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. I'll still go to the planning board, even though they don't, even though the checklist has not been fulfilled.
They'll request waivers to say, well, I don't think this applies to me, or I'm gonna make a waiver because of X, Y, Z, and I will say, that's not true. But if this is what you're doing, just keep in mind, you're probably delaying your project for a couple months because the planning board's may come to the same conclusion as me. And
Well, the thing is, if all we're doing is regurgitating the ordinances when a plan comes in and confirming them, gets kind of boring. You know, by having a pre-app or whatever, it's like, for one thing, it kind of illustrates where our definitions are not very well fleshed out, and it creates a conversation. So it kind of helps develop this thing better, I think, over time. So there's some value to having those initial conversations with projects.
Right, well, there is, but I thought you were advocating for giving the town planner more authority to make the decision what goes forward, what doesn't. I mean, I do agree with you. I mean,
No, I
the
think
question
as
is
much
out,
screening as possible is great, but I guess I don't have a problem with the pre-application things. I mean, I wasn't actually there for that whole Route 1 brewery project, that presentation, but
Well, I think pre-application, don't get me wrong, I think pre-applications are good. But I think they should be more
fleshed out.
fleshed out
Mm.
in a way that, you know. And I want to say one other thing I'd show you about you leaving. I don't know how this is gonna work, because, I mean, because you have so much institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, that is so important to the way this board functions and all of it, you know, and your relationship, you know, with Mark and how you guys work together. I mean, and you know, I would have thought you would have.
Part of it is gonna be me teaching my replacement how I've been doing the planning board meetings behind the scenes.
Has
I
you
see
ever
that
worked for the
process
town
is
before?
taking 6 months, not
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Well,
Have you
well,
ever
again,
worked for a town before? They've done this kind of local?
but yeah, she's been working with local towns. Because she's with the Island Institute, she deals with a lot of the island communities. Like,
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment. Now that I think about it, we're gonna lose your institutional knowledge, and, you know, there's a lot of nuance along with the rules here. And you gotta know how to thread that needle. And, you know, you don't just learn that by telling them, well, this is what I do. Nothing against this
No,
person,
no.
but I echo that sentiment. I think there could be a debacle in some cases.
I'll
It
still,
won't be a debacle, calm down.
Yeah, just-
I mean, I don't know if that's too strong, but I just have that,
just
Yeah.
to be clear, I'll still
I-
come to some meetings.
We'll miss you, Max.
I'll be here for the few meetings that she's supposed to be taking over. I might be
right.
on Zoom watching it and giving notes. Maybe I'll come to the town to actually be at the meeting.
Can't we just raise your salary or something?
Julie has offered, trust me, Julie has made several offers, but I do want to do the other job. It's something I kind of really wanted to do. So it's a unique opportunity I was given. It's hard for me to say no to a unique opportunity like it.
We
so.
feel for you in that regard, but yeah.
But I understand, and,
You're right.
and thank you very much. Thank you all for,
It's
but it,
gotta be interesting.
but it's also why this is a important opportunity to say what was so important about how I did things and what you do want to do to go forward, make it better if possible. And I think the pre-application is the one thing, try and strengthen that, have a little more guardrails on that. Okay, that's a good one.
You bringing the the checklist with all of your commentary from all of your previous meetings is super helpful. Saves us a ton of time in the meetings because we don't have to
Right.
get a detailed explanation and make our own determinations about some of these things. And hopefully your replacement can continue to do that. I mean, it's based on, knowledge of the land use ordinance and how it interacts with state statute and all that stuff.
And
So
thanks to AI, she'll do a great job.
I actually should have probably tested AI on this thing.
It's like,
I hear that's a thing now.
I just think too, in general, and I think we do a good job for the most part, but if we could streamline things and maybe just get more focus on the issue, just streamline it, focus it, and just keep it to the facts,
Mhm.
instead of, and I think myself, I sometimes will go off on a tangent and just a focus and a streamline and a strict kind of time, constraint, if you say, well, we're gonna get out at 8, get out at 8, you know what I'm saying?
Stay on the straight and narrow.
I think so, I think we do for the most part, but, we digress.
And clearly the message that I see from Rebecca is probably very old. Yeah, it was like 20 minutes ago. But Brendan, earlier,
Intros.
intros would probably be fine when you, especially if you have just people in the audience. That seems to be a good balance. We don't have to go through it every single time, but when we do have people, that might be a good time to just
Yeah.
go over the tone. I should also ask, just because Mark's in the audience and you're going on vacation next week, so we're probably holding you up from that.
No, I'm good.
No.
Do you have some thoughts, or are people curious about what goes on in the world of the code enforcement officer that we could also try and address going forward?
So I do have a couple of things and actually all this stuff just came up with you guys discussing it. One of which, Barbara hit on it. So you guys know, every time something happens, there's a change of use. Like the laundromat across the street. It went through a change of use. Does it meet the, everything, and then it has to go through a set of codes. Everything that we do has a change of use, and then it has a certificate of occupancy that goes along with that to make sure. One of the things that I do from a code standpoint that may be beneficial to the board, I'm not sure, is the building codes and NFPA use a structured identification of what is considered industrial, what is considered business, what is considered, and it gives examples of everything. And I'm wondering if that might be something to assist the board with definitions on when you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what category do I call what? I have to look it up sometimes too, because I'm not entirely sure, like laundromat. Well, what does it fall under? Falls under business. Oh, okay, so it's not an industrial, it's not a, it's a business. So that's something that if the board would find that beneficial, I've got a document I could definitely follow.
Did
Sure.
they didn't have to come before us to do the laundromat, did they?
No.
Just because it was the beanbag thing there, so when you say code, are the standards different if you're gonna throw the beanbag versus all those laundry machines in there? So there's
Because
something
depending
different,
on what everything is,
yeah,
it falls into certain categories.
right,
So for instance, if it's a daycare, well,
Yeah.
they have a whole different set of codes than a bowling alley would.
right,
Or, in this case, the laundromat has a different set of codes versus a restaurant. So depending on, I have to classify it
yeah,
so that I can appropriately put the proper codes in there. Well, that classification is pretty basic, no matter if it's NFPA, building
Yeah.
codes. And that's why I was kind of hinting, it's not that to get you guys into the building code business and
Yeah.
stuff, but it may be a tool for you guys to sit there and go, okay, well, somebody's putting in this. You can look down through the list and go, yeah, it says right here that falls under this category.
Can you just,
yeah.
make something that we can insert in our books for both those categories?
Yeah,
Let's do
I
it.
just have to copy the document that I keep on my desk.
From a mechanic standpoint, like we have existing definitions for everything. We constantly have these little situations where something doesn't quite fit.
Yeah.
Maybe we add a a piece of language in there saying that we, if we can't decide what it is, we can use IBC to supplement our decision-making process. Because right now, we don't have that option. We got to go by the definitions that we've got in the ordinance.
And at one time, all the change of uses came in front of the planning board.
That's,
But
yeah.
but then we changed the.
Change.
Well, that's
Okay.
actually my question is, how's that been going for you? Because like,
Right.
it totally changed the volume of work that the code enforcement office is doing,
But the
right?
change of use is very important to the function of that, because as businesses come and go, they change, and sometimes there's virtually no change. Across the street, the Jack's,
Zach's.
Zach's.
thank you.
We had lunch there today.
So Zach's, it was a restaurant before per se a sandwich shops.
Right.
So
There's no change.
literally no change.
Right.
So that's what we look for when this happens is we go through and I have to figure out, okay, what's the change of use, what's the category? And make sure that, when they're putting this in there, it's gonna meet those.
Where-
those-
Is
But I
it-
think
I'm sorry, is Zach's, is that the old sandwich shop?
in Thomaston,
Yes.
And where?
so Zach's used to be, had a spot in Thomaston, but they bought the roadside diner across the street.
Oh, okay, so
And so they're there.
so that's different, but it's it's a restaurant, but it's change of things, so they didn't have to do,
Classification is the same.
and all the rules are the same.
But I think you were talking more of like how across the street it went from cornhole to laundromat.
Correct.
Yeah,
So like from different uses, I've been fine with how that, I think that's been going very well, actually. Cause it is pretty much what I've been doing, like with the checklist. I'm already going through all the standards and a lot of them aren't applicable because environmental standards, stormwater is not gonna be needed because they're not building anything, they're not doing anything.
Did they understand they had to come to the town office for anything, or did they just assume, I'm just curious, I would
Some
think,
do, some don't.
yeah,
And,
Some we just, catch them because they're changing.
yeah.
but the people who don't do it, we usually follow up with them and.
Yeah.
As Mark said, sometimes it's just updating the contact information pretty much.
Right,
Sorry, I think Eric's got something.
Well, I just wanted to say about this, the checklist. I mean, because I find some of those sort of drawn out meetings, the ones where we have to go through the checklist piece by piece by
Yeah,
piece by
yeah.
piece, even when it's not necessary. Isn't there a way some way to streamline that so that only the things that you can determine or your counterpart or
right.
Right.
what part of the checklist really needs to be looked at and what doesn't. Because going through that checklist is really.
It's onerous.
You want to put your head in that on the table and just go to sleep.
It's
No,
like
that-
those-
I will say that on a number of occasions, we've had approvals come through where there's obvious problems. And you think that's what's going to hang it up, and it turns out that just marching through the list and talking about everything uncovers problems that nobody had considered. It's happened on multiple occasions.
Really?
and
Remember that person
doing
who
the
was-
grind
Who was
through it
gonna
is important.
butcher those animals and make workshops, and they came back 3 times?
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about?
yeah, I know what you're talking about, out on,
Fintown.
what's that?
Oh,
Yeah,
Robinson,
Robinson
right,
Road.
right,
Right, that was
Okay.
like similar, I mean, that was like, they came back 3 times.
right.
Yeah, and
And I
it was,
have-
and we kept uncovering stuff every time, with, like,
Right,
new
right.
questions
It-
about what they're doing and stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
that was kind of
Right.
like pulling teeth.
Still not up and running yet.
It's not going yet?
No, I'm still waiting for a framing inspection on it.
Oh, no.
They've gotten rid of their contractor and they've hired somebody.
Oh,
else.
no. Wow.
It's-
it really hung up.
Been a journey. But for the checklist,
Yes.
speeding it up, part of it is just acknowledging we've gone through those standards and that it is fine. I mean, for trying to, like, can you give an example for?
Well, I mean, even if you took like a whole section, I've forgotten how they're numbered, right?
Right,
Section 8, right? And you gotta go, okay, are there any issues in section 8 that we need to really address? I mean, everybody can look at them and somebody can say, well, I need to address this particular issue. And then we can sweep, or if not, then you can sweep right through them into 9. But going to go through 8A, 8B, 8C, 8D, 8K, J. I mean,
Chinese torture.
it gets to be a bit much. I mean, I think I get your point, Stephanie, for sure, but if you look at that complete section, say, is there anything in this section needs to be addressed? And hopefully that someone who's on the board, who, who looked through the application or, and the checklist beforehand would say, okay, this, highlight that and say, this is something I really want to bring up. I mean, it puts more of the onus on the board members to do their homework.
Right.
But I mean, absolutely, Brendan is brilliant at this because he really does go through this checklist. He comes up with these things.
Hmm.
But then why not just skip to them? You know, unless, you know.
Well, so some of it is public communication, you know, like we're expressing, you know, in the public record that we are meticulously going through everything. So part of it is building confidence with the people in town who are watching us and wanting to know, like, are these people doing,
Are we treating
good
everybody
job.
fairly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, and so that's part of it. Part of some, I mean, on multiple occasions, we found items in here that weren't correct, you know, where you've copied and pasted from the previous job, and like, you know, we're going through and I'm like,
I'm not
this is
denying that.
all, and I'll say, oh, this is all taken care of.
Yeah.
And Max will be like, oh, no, actually, I'm still waiting for that. And, you know, and so
Yeah,
marching through it is how you make sure that you don't make the mistakes.
Well, okay.
I agree with you. It takes a long
It
time.
takes a long
I
time.
try to keep moving.
No, I
forward,
think,
you know, with
but
everything.
it's long, it's a tedious process because they're so long, there's so many things to look at in that checklist.
and going through the checklist, sometimes I'll see some redundant items that, like the stormwater plan, it's mentioned in Article 3, but it's also mentioned in Article 8, which is confusing that that's the case. So part of it might just be trying to cross out one and just say
If it's covered in another
yeah,
location.
covered somewhere else. And others, because trust me, I would like to speed, I really would have liked to speed up the checklist item. But it is a matter of just people seeing that we didn't just hear it and immediately approved it. Because the gravel, because I think of the gravel pits, you remember those ones.
I love that gravel pit.
Yep. Neighbors came out for that first meeting. They were, a lot of back and forth was going on, but I think the first meeting we actually were doing the checklist. One neighbor was there, said, you know, I just want to make sure you guys went through the standards and sat down. No neighbors said anything at that point.
We bored him to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
Oh, no, I just got one last thing. I would just like to question the board. There are certain things that I see in the land use ordinance that I question whether or not the wording could be updated and stuff like that. My question is, do you want me to hold on to a bunch of different stuff? Or should I forward this as they come up to the board so that when you have meetings that, you know, end at, you know, 6:15 at night. and
Oh, I
you wanna
wish.
Address one or two at a time versus, you know, 14 at a one
Yeah.
shot deal when you're updating it. I just don't know how you would like to have that information come from, you know, from me.
Well, I guess I don't know exactly what the process is like in the office here about how this works. And we usually have a bunch of potential changes that we're talking about throughout the course of the year.
Yeah.
It would be nice if we could be doing updates on, like, you know, every time we have an election. Which I'm not sure if we can. I think we can do changes in
yeah,
November, right?
you can do them as often, we can do something for November if we want.
Right. So like, I'm always interested in, you know, productive changes, like.
Yeah, my feeling is I would much rather present something to you and let you guys work on it over a short period of time. And when you get enough of a change together, you want to put it to the, you know, the voters for an updated version, then you guys.
Are you gonna make suggestions about language or?
There is, and
Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily get into, you
Yeah.
know, specifics right now and stuff, but there are a few things in there. To give you an example, there's some language in there, and I think Max and I talked about this before, where it specifically refers to an action in the land use ordinances as being approved by the planning board. Well, if this is something that's approved at the CEO level,
Oh, yeah.
it really should be by, you know, change to whatever the approving board body is. If it's the planning board that has to approve this, well, then that's who, you know, gets that.
We
But-
just did a whole batch of those. Yeah. If we missed some, yeah, absolutely. Let's
Yeah.
let's
So
catch
I
them.
mean, that's the type of things that I'm talking about. If we get something that is not really clear, do we bring it to you and say, hey, take a look at this, see what you think, you guys mull it over and figure out, is this something that's gonna work? So,
I think that's a great idea. I think the land use ordinance is a living, breathing document.
Mhm.
It's changed, it's not set in stone, much like our constitution. I think you could change, and this town is changing,
Mm.
the state's changing, so you gotta change, a little bit with it. You can be flexible.
right, and
As
there's
it-
all kinds of, you're
Yeah.
totally right, John, there's all kinds of things that we're seeing that people are getting, ingenious on, well, they wanna do something
Right.
different in a different way.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily make it bad, but really, it's something the board ought to address and say, is this really what we want,
I concur.
So,
Okay. Yeah. Sounds great.
that's it, that's all I've got, sorry.
Oh, no, you're good.
Nice.
No, you could.
So I have something.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I feel you wanted to say something at the very beginning.
I did, when I started writing my notes, and it's like, get this out. So what do we want to see about the planning board? The thing about the planning board for me is like, I'm always so astounded that I've had very little chance to plan anything. It's kind of, reactionary, whatever happens. Anyway, I went to a couple of economic development committee meetings and it was like, these guys are having a lot of fun. Because they're figuring out where the town sign should be. They're looking at like the public parking area, well, the master plan
Yeah.
for downtown, the village, those kind of the things that were developed like in 2011 is when that
Oh,
came
yeah.
out? All that kind of stuff. And it occurred to me that maybe because I don't know if you've ever looked at it or you've looked at it, maybe with being involved with Waldeboro Inn now, but anyways, a lot of documents like that are kind of like out there that as a board, a planning board, we don't look at, like eagle eye view of what's going on in town, and there may be things that we could put, what the board could put input into, and or work with the even the Economic Development Committee, see what they're working on to see how we could help, or not that we're tasked with guiding anything in terms of what gets developed in town, but we do have certain knowledge about what's going on in town, and I thought it just would be kind of interesting even to have a like a special session where we put these things, have everybody look at the things, go around with stickies and make ideas about certain areas in town that wouldn't it be, or wouldn't it be great if we had, could think about getting housing in this area or that area or something like, even on that. I mean, some of those ideas come to you.
Right.
I like that.
But, what can we do to facilitate
I
that?
like that, Barbara, idea, but is that within our purview
No.
to do that, or is it just more of a?
Extracurricular.
Okay,
So,
no, I like that.
and I
I
think
do.
part of that would probably be great when
like
the
that.
town, because the town's gonna soon be updating the comprehensive plan as well, and that's probably
Oh, really?
the category where it would fall under to start.
Right,
Because the districts have been pretty much the same since 2005.
Mhm.
So that might be the opportunity to say, this is how the town's been. Is there a way to change that and improve density, allow certain things here versus there?
The other thing, as far as making some improvements around town is, maybe before you leave, Max, is to have somebody interview you for the newspaper to explain how the new laws that came through the state, the ADUs and all the, the density housing thing, how that could, in plain English, could work, for instance, hypothetical, have do an article about, so get people thinking, who are looking at the paper about, maybe I could, look at my own
Right.
property differently, and create some housing,
you
so.
could get Molly Raines to come in and interview you. That's a great idea, actually.
Yeah, I thought someone wanted to do that, actually. I told you about this, about
Yes.
not being scared to actually do ADUs and stuff. I don't know, this was months ago, though.
I mean, to that point, I
Good,
mean,
both of you.
to your point, I mean, I think it's a good idea, but, and for instance, I mean, the town is never gonna change until something happens with Springbrook. Until some alteration to the facade or the way it's used, or whether they put retail at the bottom.
Yeah.
Something has to happen there.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we're gonna stagnate downtown because it's just such an ugly building.
Mhm.
And it just dominates the whole kind of gestalt down there. It's just
Maybe we
ugly.
should have a competition. A design
Something has to
competition.
happen there. I mean, it's just really sad.
Yeah.
It's just such a drawback to this town.
Do you feel
So-
it's like an eyesore, like just looking at that, or is that too strong? Because when I look at it, I see that they're not using some of the buildings.
So
It-
just,
Yeah.
sorry if I'm cutting
No, that's
off on
okay,
all
that's
this.
okay.
I do like to honor the unofficial out by 8 o'clock rule.
Okay.
But I did want to go on to what Barbara was talking about doing more than just following the checklist and the standards, looking beyond it, because again, we've been talking about, can't believe we have to keep talking about the laundromat, but I will. As it was being done, one thing that I've also been hearing from people, and again, Mark can jump in, but the appearance of it.
Mhm.
Just that said, like, we didn't require that. That wasn't something that we chose to do, but they decided to go that extra step and have those improved appearance. Which could certainly be something the board does decide for other standards, whether it's a change of, even if it's a change of use or just in general. Because we only really have the architectural standards for the historic village. That's the
Mhm.
only place where you have to look certain ways.
Mhm.
And it's certainly something that adds on to the expense, but but again, it's also something that could be waived as well.
So
We did that on the gray building, we spent quite a bit of time on that, and now the
Yes.
thing is kaput.
Well,
So I feel like.
But it's paused.
it's
But I-
paused,
Yeah.
and again, that was kind of the protection or barriers so that it wouldn't be what
Right.
some neighbors were concerned, another sprawl block.
So we only have the appearance language in there related to the historic districts.
Yep.
Sproul Block's not in the historic district.
Yep.
It's in downtown business.
Yep.
That is a very good example of using the cheapest materials that you can to build a building.
Mm.
You got precast concrete, lintels that are dead flat. There's nothing to them. You got utility sized brick, which you never see people build buildings out of.
We're talking about sprawl block.
Sproul block.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And like those two things together, like if you change the size of that brick, it would have added a slight bit of cost to the project, but it would have totally transformed the feel of that building. The concrete lintels, if you had made those in a different shape, it would have added some detail to it. And those couple little things like would make that feel like less of a, an impressive blooming building over the downtown. And like I think that there's something to that, and that if we had a way of creating some kind of reasonable framework in which we gave ourselves the power to demand some small things like that. Like it's fantastic that CMU building, the laundromat building, is now got the wainscot, the water table on there, and it looks like they're doing some kind of siding system up over the CMU. Like it's got to look 1,000% better.
Oh, yeah.
And like if we had
It's
the
a front door
ability to
door, right?
require something like that, like
Yep.
we can definitely make things look a little prettier, on our front doorstep.
So the owners did that of their own accord, they did,
Yeah.
so they just said, we're gonna spend this much more money just to aesthetically be pleasing.
That was the
really-
renovation plan that he put forward, yes.
And as a percentage of the total construction
Yeah.
costs, like it's not a huge amount of money,
Right?
and like look at what happened with VOA. Like they never
Right.
complained. Like they could have said, you don't really have the ability to force us to use this material or that material. They didn't. They just thought about it for a minute, changed some finishes, and like it made a huge difference in what that building looked like. And I think that if we had the ability to do that, maybe we say it's for the Route 1 corridor,
The only thing we have now is in the districts is the setback and the land, quote unquote, landscaping requirements.
right.
Such as it is, which is.
But isn't there someplace in the code that like this came up earlier in many many months ago, about aesthetics. And actually, I think John said, well, we don't, our job is not here is not to deal with aesthetics.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that, because I do think our job is to some degree to deal with aesthetics because they make a difference. Even,
Yeah.
especially as you just pointed out, in all you do a couple of small things and you can change something radically in how it looks. So I think that, and I don't know what number, where it is in the code, but it's in there.
Yeah, you brought it up, but
Yeah.
the fact that the fact that the language is completely ambiguous makes it sort of impossible for us to do much with it. If we
Well-
made it a little bit more specific and gave ourselves a tool to use, like I think we could
See,
leverage.
But I
that
thought
a
it was
little bit.
our job to interpret that. In other words, so it's, yes, it is sort of open, but then our job as the planning board is to interpret what that means.
So,
Yeah.
Well, I think that we shouldn't have an ambiguous statute that's up to the caprice of whoever happens to sit on the board. Like, if we have a system, it doesn't have to be a big system, but a couple of paragraphs about how we're going to decide and what power we're going to grant ourselves in the ordinance change. Like, I think we can make something that
Well, but
works.
then I think we should do that. Because I think that would make a big difference in certain areas of town where it's really important.
now, the quick thing I'll ask about that. Are we talking about something that would be town-wide or just narrow to a certain area? Like we have the historic district, but should this be something extended to just what the town has defined as growth areas, which is Route 1 and the village area?
Absolutely.
Or
Route 1, the village area.
I think that makes sense
Historic area.
because like it would be impossible to make it work. It would be onerous for everybody involved, the planning board, code enforcement, homeowners. Yeah, I think that village and the
and Route 1?
and the Route 1 sounds, yeah,
Rural residential, I'm leaving out of this.
yeah, I think that makes sense.
Or like the Bell's place, it's gonna, that's like a big metal building that's going tucked back off of Route 1, but we haven't asked.
Supposedly, they're gonna be finding a different place where they'll move into a building, but
um,
I'm still waiting to get an application.
Well, as-
We're still waiting for an application.
As an example, though, we didn't ask them to, well, we haven't seen anything. We don't know
Right,
anything, but that is the front door of
Right.
Waldeboro.
okay. That's fair.
We really covered a lot of territory today.
Yeah, I know. These are the type of meetings where I never know if it's gonna be quick or go all the way to 8.
Let's go to 8 of 8.
8 of 8.
Is there anything else that we want to talk about in workshop stuff?
Lot.
The only thing I'm just concerned about the transfer of power with you,
That's
and I don't mean to belabor this, but again, you have a certain institutional knowledge. Okay, we know that. And then there's a certain nuance to this thing, and I'm just hoping that this person, I'm sure with time, but I think there's gonna be a gap where we're gonna be afloat. And I hope we don't get me wrong, but I just think I'm gonna go back. I hope we don't have a debacle if we have a very difficult, thorny issue, and then all of a sudden we're in a place where we don't have a steer, So, and again, I'm not hoping that. I have that feeling.
I can't speak for the new person. I haven't met her yet. I don't know anything
Right.
about her. She may be fantastic. But I can echo your thoughts and feelings because I have the same thing.
Right.
You guys see this.
Yeah,
I see everything that happens in there
right.
on Tuesdays and Thursdays when he's in there. And I can tell you that Max heads off so much stuff
Yeah.
that you don't ever know about. And I echo that. I mean,
Okay. I just.
first thing I said to Julie when she goes, oh yeah, Max is gonna be doing,
Listen,
I keep calling it the brown tail moth thing, but.
they're very different.
So, I told Julie, I said, I'm not gonna be doing the whole planning board too, am I, because it was like, I see what he does.
Mhm.
And that's, it's not dealing with you that had anything, it's
Right.
just seeing all the work that he puts into that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Taking care
thank
of
you
the
for
harbor.
everything, Max.
Yeah.
Honestly, like.
I'm
I'm looking at her LinkedIn. She seems like a very confident professional.
Have
Yeah.
you met her, the
I haven't.
person?
I-
'Cause
I'm very confident that there will be bumps here and there, but
Right.
it's more of learning to get used to it all.
Right.
And I think, I mean, the checklist, I think, is the big thing that, as long as she is able to do that, I think you're all competent to like still do everything else afterwards. And really, sometimes I feel I've just been at some of these meetings and I haven't had to do or say that much. Because you do ask some very good questions and you do catch yourselves and, it's more of me just being here to answer a legal
But
question.
it's also because you've done so much homework beforehand.
Right, which,
When we go into these meetings, we're really well prepared.
which
Yeah.
I think my replacement will, which I think Kate will, also be doing a lot of as well when she's doing this. And I'm simply showing her, this is the ordinance, this is the standard that this is referring to. And then that's it, really. I mean,
Well, it is what it is, I guess.
we,
So if you guys proceed with 3 board members, 2 is a quorum? For the
No.
rest of this
No.
board?
3 is a quorum.
3 is a
So
quorum.
what happens?
so if one of them is sick, the meeting is canceled.
Well, hopefully somebody is interested in joining the board.
Somebody has to join.
There's nobody in the,
Hopefully
We will,
we see John again.
yep.
He hasn't been on that long, has he?
No,
Over a
he
year.
hasn't showed up though.
but I haven't seen him in 6 months or anything.
Yeah.
We
he's
didn't
not-
have meetings for probably 3 out of those 6 months.
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that. So, you know,
A lot of conflicts too, but I'm gonna have to check with John to see, if he's
Yeah.
up for his renewal of his term.
So 3,
Okay.
it's 3
Yeah, I would,
quorum.
yeah, I think everyone, you should be able to see the year your terms are up on the town website, actually, if you're interested.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but yeah. That's gonna be part of my last job for the rest of the month, just telling Julie and the rest of the select board, hey, we need more planning board
So
members.
Barbara, if you go,
Yeah,
then that means I'll be thrust into the senior member of the board.
No,
oh my
you-
gosh. That's just you, John. You're the knowledge.
Oh, that's funny. You can't go. You can't go. I mean, that's funny. I'll technically be the senior member.
technically you will, yeah,
Really.
all right.
Um,
Are there any other,
it'll be fun.
That's funny.
so, since there's almost 10 minutes left, I didn't know if anyone had any other items. The only other item left on the agenda tonight is the March minutes.
I'd move to approve them as written.
Roger, I mean, second.
Don second.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Right.
All right.
All right,
Minutes
yeah.
approved. I have one comment. I'm wondering if, Max, there's anything you can share about this upcoming wireless tower in South Waldeboro. Because I've been contacted by multiple people who want to know what's happening, and I've told them I don't know anything about it because I realize you probably can't say very much. but-
No, well, I can't say that I can't say that much, not because I'm trying to keep it hidden. I
Right,
can't say that much because I don't know that much about it either.
perfect.
Where is it?
I don't know.
2734 Friendship?
Right, before, do you know where, Flippers and Concord is?
Sure.
Right.
Before that, there's a farm and the barn is starting to fall apart.
Between Flippers and Fintown Road.
Yeah.
Yes, it's back, yeah, towards Fintown,
Yeah,
same side.
What is it, a cell phone tower?
we don't know. All we know is that it's a tower. So they did a federal review back in October or November, which the whole point of that was just to get the public comment while they are doing their environmental review. Historic sites, wetlands, that endangered habitats, all that stuff. They are required by our ordinance to come to the planning board for
Right.
a site plan review, which we have told them about many times. They also had to get a building permit from Mark, which he can't do until the site plan is done. I've already talked with the lawyer many times back when that environmental review happened because they
Yeah.
wanted to make sure it was zoned appropriately, which it says it is for the rural area, but that's a different tar. I just haven't gotten an
This is
application.
the landowner you're talking about, that's leasing the land? or-
No,
or
no,
is
this is the
company.
actual
Company
company.
that's. gonna
This is
put
the
it
actual
in.
company.
And they're leasing that from a landowner.
Yes.
Uh.
And
What, I don't know, Brandon, what are the people telling you? What are their concerns? Is it just?
They just want to know what's happening and I don't know anything about it because there's been no application. That's
Yep.
pretty much it. They want to know
Wow.
what's happening.
The only conversation I've had has been, they wanted to put an access road. Within
But-
25 feet of a cemetery, which state law prohibits.
Yeah,
So I had a
Gotta be-
conversation with a lawyer.
Doesn't
that
have to
said,
be
"That's all
50 feet?
No, state law is 25 feet.
25, okay.
Towns can create more stricter ones, so
I
like
see.
50 or so, but
Okay.
we don't have anything, so it has to be 25 feet.
Wow.
That would be something actually a standard we probably should have in the ordinance now I'm thinking about it. But
Any road within 25 feet?
you
Or
can't
is it
do, you
a-
can't do any improvements within 25 feet of a marked or unmarked cemetery.
Okay,
You might dig up somebody in the process.
That's.
So that's the
part of criteria.
concern.
Which would
So,
be,
This is gonna be a cell tower that all the various companies can use, or is it specific to one company?
Again, I don't have the application, but that's kind of been what the other towers have been. It's not just one cell provider
Yeah.
who owns that. It's some third party who
That-
built the tower and they lease out different
Right.
spots to different providers. But that's what those two did. I don't know if that's what's gonna happen down there.
Our cell service stinks in this town.
Well,
Yeah.
well, the joke-
But also nobody wants the tower in their
Nobody
backyard.
wants
Right.
that on their
Well,
backyard.
the joke,
NIMBY.
well, the joke I keep making, oh, Rebecca is saying it's Melvin Williams's barn.
Ah.
Oh, boy.
Okay. A joke I keep making is that we don't know if it's a cell phone tower down there. Red Zone Wireless might try to make a comeback.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
They're a wireless internet company who, like. I don't care, I'm not here that long. They just provide poor internet service and they're useless now that there's fiber throughout the town, so that's why I keep
Gotcha.
making the joke.
Got it.
Huh.
But yeah,
Yeah,
when we get the application, you're all the first to know about it. When I get the application, or my replacement gets the application, and I'll probably be back for that one because it's a special case. But until then,
okay.
don't know.
okay. Well, we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Hey, no,
Kelly adjourned.
We adjourn. I second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.